What was the final straw that ended a lifelong friendship? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Iferferlin, story 1, kept borrowing money from me to feed their kids or get their kids medication. It's an emergency, and truly, they were destitute. These instances were plausible, but one day after being told one of the kids had been hospitalized and released home, and between the Uber rides to and from the hospital, they didn't have enough for his meds at the pharmacy, I signed on to Facebook and saw pictures of them, sick kid included, at a block party. Destroyed the friendship for me. For the record, I never expected them to pay back borrowed money for food or medicine. I was happy to help. Those kids were like my kids too. It was betrayal and finding out I wasn't loved, like I loved that got me. Story 2, insured destinatures. Everything was someone else's fault, on both the macro and micro levels. If it was an interpersonal issue, it was never him at fault, ever. Relationship problems, always his partner's at fault. Even when the same reasons caused each breakup, got into a verbal altercation at the bar, someone else's fault completely. It was too exhausting. Story 3. When I was a freshman in college, I shared a room with my best friend from high school. I kept a diary that I wrote in every day, and I would hide it in my locked closet. One day I came back from class to find her reading out loud from my diary to a group of our friends. She had broken into the closet just to get the diary. I haven't spoken to that in 30 plus years. Story 4. He dated my best friend. They met because of me, and she utterly trashed his heart and cheated on him. Just awful. I regret introducing them. Our friendship got ghosted during their relationship, and after they broke up, it was clearly done. Sucks, but I get it. Still miss the dude. Hope he's happier now that he got the away from everyone. Story 5. She became very insecure and jealous when I got into law school. I came home to visit after my first semester, and we caught up over coffee. From my perspective, I had hardcore imposter syndrome. School was stressful and hard and scary, but I was learning a lot, challenging myself, and meeting nice people. She started to pull away, to no-show for phone dates and to generally blow me off. When I finally got a hold of her, she told me, "You went off to law school and suddenly thought you were better and smarter than everyone else." My jaw was on the floor. That narrative existed nowhere but in her own mind. I told her she was wrong and that her perspective hurt my feelings. She cried and yelled, "I know I'm fucked up about friendships with women." That was the last time we ever spoke. Story 6. She was a key witness to my rape trial, but was too lazy to go into the police station to make a statement. She had 3 years to do it. I lost the trial, but it was close. I'll always wonder if I would have got justice if she had done it. Story 7. I was diagnosed with cancer a year after moving across the country from my friends from high school. I didn't ask for them to do anything except play some online games with me while I recovered from surgery. Not one of them did. They were playing other games I could see in my various friends lists, but none of them would put aside the games they were playing to keep me company and take my mind off of things. No texts, no phone calls, nothing. The only thing I asked for was time, online company, and they put in zero effort. This was the last straw in a long string of feeling like an afterthought. It's been 9 years, and not a single one of them has even tried to contact me since then. Guess being an afterthought was too optimistic even. Story 8. We were supposed to move in together, the first move away from our parents. Fortunately, we were renting from my parents because the night before our move-in date, he called me to say he had gotten his own apartment earlier that day without me. He then listed entirely everything about me that annoyed him and every mistake and flaw I had that he knew about. Since he was my best friend, it was a lot. There was no sign this was coming. We had only ever argued a couple of times. I never knew that so much about me was so distasteful to him. I was devastated. A couple of weeks later, he called and came over until I spoke to him. He was very apologetic. For reasons I would have completely understood had he told me, he had a breakdown and realized he needed to live on his own. Knowing it was going to mess things up for me, he made it my fault. He said he didn't mean any of it and was horrified about how he treated me. Yet it was so detailed and specific, going back years to incidents that I had no idea were an issue. There was just no fixing it. I could never feel comfortable and trust him again. On one hand, I miss people I used to know. I don't miss him or think of him often or with nostalgic fondness. My daughter doesn't know who he is when she comes across old pictures of us, but she knows about other old friends, since I mentioned them. On the other hand, it's been 20 years. It's hard for me to have close friends still. because I feel like they may be building lists of things I do wrong and ways I just am wrong and awful. And maybe they'll call one day when I least expect it and list it all. It wasn't good. Story 9. Sir, extremely judgmental for years. After being a pushover for so long, when I finally stood up for myself and told her that I felt hurt by her words, she told me she wasn't sorry 3 times and used weaponized therapy speak to justify her behavior. I was also going through a breakup. My cat of 10 years died, and I had one of those 1 to 2 long colds that wouldn't go away. I couldn't talk to her for a while after that, but when she finally reached out to me again, she asked what she could do to mend this relationship other than apologizing. Literally, all I needed was an apology, and she couldn't even give me that. Story 10. Well, I learned that day that anything could go wrong within a sec. My best friend, who was like a sister to me, had her eyes on my BF for a long time. I was too trusting to notice it at that moment. But later on, I caught them hitting it in my room when I was away, only to find out it wasn't their first time. And I've been played all along. I felt so bad and traumatized. How can she be so wicked and evil? And how can he betray my love for him? I felt used. Story 11. I had supported her through a terrible breakup, canceling her wedding the morning of, with an abusive alcoholic that could be its own separate post, and countless other personal tragedies for a decade. She has a wonderful heart, but cannot get out of her own way, and is completely unreceptive to any type of advice, no matter how gentle. I became worried about her as I noticed her mental health declining and essentially had a come to Jesus with her and 2 other friends in an incredibly supportive, safe setting. She lashed out at me and said she was sick of my drama and didn't need me as a friend if I couldn't support her. I told her if by support she meant watch her spiral into yet another black hole she'll need help crawling out of, then she was right. I said, I am always here to help you, but I can't watch this and do nothing. She never spoke to me again. It broke my heart, but after speaking to another former friend of hers with a similar experience, I realized it's just her pattern. Story 12. Found out he slept with my high school girlfriend and held that secret for 10 years. He also invited my 13-year-old sister out to drink and party with our friends. Drew the line, ended the friendship, and clocked him in the jaw for that one. I didn't learn he slept with my high school girlfriend until many years after the friendship ended. But that made a lot of things make complete sense. He was always extremely angry and ticked off at me whenever I spent time with her. He was never a friend, really. Story 13. She faked dying of cancer. Edit. People are asking for the story. I have never written it down. English isn't my first language, and it still upsets me deeply, so bear with me. Her name is Nina, and yeah, that's her real name because I am done giving a... We were best friends since our teens. Through our youth, our 20s. Didn't have a lot of contact in our 30s, but that mostly because of me moving for my career. Yet I remain being very fond of her and still would lend her $3,000 during the pandemic to keep her business afloat in a heartbeat. Contact almost dried out after that. I pinned it to the fact that my proud friend just was too ashamed to owe me money and not being able to pay me back. 2 years later, she wrote me a message out of the blue in the dead of night along the lines, "Thank you for everything you did for me. I want you to know that I will always love you." Called her immediately. She was sobbing, telling me she was dying of cancer like her mother did when we were 19. Told me that she refuses to continue with chemotherapy and that it will be over in less than a year. I cried with her, offered my help, asked if it would be okay if I visited her, but she refused. The following months, I would check in with her, sent her messages, pictures from back of the day, asked if I can do anything, and of course, eased her mind about the money she owed me still. She barely wrote back, wouldn't let me visit her, wouldn't pick up the phone. I would lie if I'd say that her behavior didn't raise some red flags with me. But hey, this is Nina, my ninny, my oldest friend, so I brushed it off, told myself I had to respect my dying friend's wishes, and grieve by myself. Then about 3 months in, her ex called me. Her ex, the man she had been together with for more than 10 years, and who, as she told me, threw her out on the street 2 years ago, during a pandemic, which of course made me hate him and never contact him again. The first thing he did was apologizing for not calling earlier, that he needed some time to recover. Then he unloaded. Nina told him 2 years prior almost the same thing she told me a few months back, that she had lung cancer and that the odds weren't in her favor. He tried to support her as good as he could. He is himself chronically ill and lives of a disability pension. He would cook for her, plant her favorite flowers in their garden, made a collage of pictures of her mom, and after they'd spend a beautiful evening together, she would say things like, "You know, this might be one of our last happy nights together," totally crushing him and his spirits every time. She would pretend to have chemo on the weekend for several days at a time. He wasn't allowed to visit, was, if even, only allowed to accompany her to the entrance, outside of the hospital, because she needed to do this on her own. She would write him during her hospital stay, for example, that the rescue helicopters are flying like crazy today, praying emoji, and I know it sounds insane in hindsight that he didn't see through it for so long, but god damn it, you don't think anybody's capable of pulling something like this off, especially not a person you love and whom you believe to know wholeheartedly. Also, the level of manipulation. The sheer sophistication with which she made the big lie believable through an endless stream of tiny little lies is flat out frightening. But well, everybody has to learn sometime, I guess. One weekend, while she was pretending to have chemo, she went silent, which was unusual since they would be messaging several times a day, plus a phone call every night. He was worried sick and called the hospital in a panic, fearing for the worst, asking for Nina. Receptionist lady said she would have to check with other staff since there is nothing in her computer. She called him back after a while to let him know. There was no patient with the name Nina surname at the hospital, and after a pause, "I am sorry, sir, but a Nina surname hasn't been a patient in this hospital for years now. This is not a large city. There is no other hospital that does chemo, not within a 2-hour drive." And it was the bloody hospital where she would allow him to drop her off occasionally. God, that poor man. I feel like for thinking so ill of him for so long. Anyways, after the phone call, he of course was still in disbelief, so he called the woman Nina shared her shop with, who also was very surprised to hear that Nina and him were still a couple and still living together. Because Nina of course told her as well that they broke up, which was very believable since she had been seeing another man who rented her a tiny flat near the shop. A lawyer, a married man with 2 children, mind you. Like Nina's asshole of a father who left her, her brother, and sick mom for his affair partner back in the day. The affair with Lawyerman started, you guessed it, 2 years prior. Oh, and apparently Nina had also sold her share of the shop a while back, which was also news to her ex and me as well. He confronted her when she came home on Sunday night after a chemo. Turns out, nope, she never had cancer. She made it up to cover up the affair. The reason he couldn't reach her the whole weekend was because she was on a trip to Italy with her lawyerman and lost her phone. And yes, she deliberately told me and other people that were close to her that he'd thrown her on the street so that we wouldn't talk to each other because we weren't supposed to know about her cancer. He of course threw her out immediately, and for real this time. It was the same bloody night she told me she had cancer. Here is the thing. I knew every word he told me was true. I knew it in my heart. There were signs, tiny red flags, things that wouldn't add up, tons and tons of it over the course of a friendship that lasted for decades. But of course, I also didn't want to believe it, so I still made my own phone calls. I called the woman Nina had her shop with, called people from back in the day, and people living in the same small city that might know her. And well, turns out the woman I thought was one of my oldest, dearest friends, my tiny ninny, is a deeply deranged, incredibly cruel and stone-cold psychopath that leaves a path of destruction in her wake. I don't know what went wrong. If it was her mother's death, who truly was one of the greatest, kindest, funniest women I have ever met, that triggered this sickness in Nina, or if it has always been there, lurking. I don't now, and it doesn't matter. I haven't contacted Nina since her ex called me that evening. Him and I have become friends again, trying to help each other heal from her. Nina hasn't contacted me either. She probably knows what's up. I don't care. I got my closure by making sure Lawyerman's wife knows what her husband is up to. And if you by any chance are reading this, Nina, yeah, it was me. And you can keep the bloody money if you promise me that I don't have to ever see your face again. Story for an in. Best friend of 19 years tells me to go talk to a cute guy at a wedding. Guy and I hit it off and start a long-distance relationship. Best friend of 19 years gives me the silent treatment for no reason for 3 weeks, including my birthday, because I told her that Guy and I are doing really well. Best friend of 19 years starts talking to me again, but never explains herself and never apologizes for acting like a child. Never says she's happy that I'm happy in a new relationship. Never shows any support. Best friend of 19 years, and I start hanging out again. But I keep a safe distance emotionally because why did she get upset about me starting a relationship with someone that she told me to go talk to in the first place? After 1.5 years of hanging out again, found out that best friend of 19 years still talks about my relationship behind my back. That was the final straw for me. Blocked on everything. Moved on. Actually, much less stress in my life since cutting her off. No longer best friend of 19 years. Story 15. The straw, my mom dying, apparently. Friends for decades. She ghosted me when my mom died of cancer. I talked to her about it, and she said, "I got the feeling you wanted space." I let her know I needed her in my life, especially now, and she said she'd do better. When I stopped being the one to initiate contact, I never heard from her again. It's been 4 years. Mind you, we went through typically life items together, but also she was there for me when my dad died a decade previous. We were together through a house fire her family suffered from. We went through all major life changes together. I still love her. I hope she's doing well. Story 16. Kinda had an epiphany after my current girlfriend told me he had made a pass at her after he knew we were dating. He's done the same with basically every woman I've dated. And for one reason or another, at the time, I'd forgive him or give him a pass because of extenuating circumstances. I don't know why, but after that last time, I decided that I actually don't give a what his excuse is. Trying to actively sabotage my relationships is not something I should have to tell a friend is not cool, let alone reiterate it every time I enter a new relationship. Story 17. I'm a fairly introverted person. I don't need a lot of attention. My friend, who was also a cousin, was the opposite. She brought drama wherever she went, and it was always about her. She was fun to be around, though, and had actually found it somewhat entertaining. But as we got older, it started to wear on me. Then I went through something really traumatic and needed support. She couldn't offer any. There just wasn't any way she could insert herself into my crisis, so she wasn't interested. That was the last straw. She reached out every few years, and I basically told her to off. The last time she messaged me, I just didn't respond. I couldn't even be bothered. Story 18. A year attorney. She was unvaccinated and refused to take a COVID test before seeing me. My mother was terminally ill and severely immunocompromised, so I was absolutely trying to minimize the risk of getting COVID so I could still see my mom. She refused to take a test twice despite kind and calm requests and explanations on the basis that she didn't want to get a sinus infection. This was in the time of nasal swabs, not mouth swabs for COVID tests. You know, those nasal swabs that are sterile and can't cause infection. I'm 100% sure that it wasn't about a sinus infection. It was about control. She had been annoyed because I hadn't validated her anti-vax stance in the past. Similarly, I know she wanted more validation for her religious views, which she'd acquired in her 30s and which I didn't share. I'd told her that I was happy her faith made her happy, but I think she wanted me to truly share her beliefs. I'd also said that her sister's bisexuality was fine with me when she'd stated that a wedding of two women was not what God wants. I think all of those different views just threatened the way she saw the world and how she saw herself. Her last text thanked me for sharing my views re-COVID and its potential to kill my mom, then became pseudo-concerned when I didn't reply. I read the whole situation as, I want to say whatever I want to you, but I want to still feel like a nice person, so please reply and give me that validation. I didn't reply to her, but I still ask myself whether the mature thing to do would have been to clearly reply and state that I didn't want to stay in contact. It's taken me until now, over a year later, to see through the pain and formulate what I might have said. We'd been friends since the first days of high school, 20 plus years. In essence, we just acquired very different views from each other as adults, but I can't pretend her attitude towards my mom and towards the horrible journey my family had to take wasn't devastating. Life is a bloody, painful journey at times, that's for sure. Story 19. She burst into a dinner party of people neither of us know to make an announcement. She didn't knock on the door. The guests were seated at the table, and she loudly said that I had given her herpes. A lie. The hostess of the party, it was a gathering of her work friends, knew us both, so she told me in private. That ripped the rug out from under my feet, and I went, no contact on the crazy woman. That was 40 years ago. Story 20. So I haven't ended this friendship per se, but I have stepped back from it. I grew up with my buddy, and his family wasn't the greatest. Mom was a stripper. Dad wasn't too bad, but a little stern. Think typical boomer, Gen X blue-collar father. Parents got divorced, and the home life devolved a little further. He fell in with the wrong crowd in high school, and we drifted apart a bit. I left, but we'd reconnect years later whenever I'd come back to town. I always made a point to try and see him. My father died in January of 24, and since this guy was like another brother to me and another son to my father, I hoped he'd join us at the memorial. He swore he'd be there, but never showed. My older brother's wife graduated with her master's in May of that same year, and I invited this guy again, gave him about a month's heads up, and reminded him a time or two leading up to it. Swore he'd be there, but he never showed. I still love him like a brother, but I came to realize he just wasn't in a place, mentally or emotionally, to maintain lasting adult friendships, likely stemming from all that he went through as a kid. I'll leave the ball in his court, but I wouldn't be surprised if I never heard from him again. Story 21. Distance, I guess. When me and my parents migrated to the UK, I started school but was unhappy in it. Then in my second year, I got moved and he became my first of very few friends in that school. We were basically inseparable until we graduated from the school 4 years later. He went to a different secondary school and we kind of lost contact. After that, I tried to restore it through our parents since they were still friends, even getting his number. But no matter what I tried, I just never got a reply back. Eventually, after trying for God knows what time years later, I asked myself, do I really respect myself that little to chase someone who doesn't have the decency to reply? And deleted everything related to him. Story 22. Sometimes it's a weird thing that you can't even explain. I've stopped talking to some really close friends for no reason at all. Just growing apart and becoming different people that no longer click, I guess. I've come to terms with the fact that some friendships just come with an expiry date. Move on. Be thankful they came into your life. Next. Story 23. I was in the middle of a divorce, and my childhood bestie told me that I was a Christian and that I deserved being mentally abused. Spread lies to my family, saying I was on and drinking wildly every night, and made my life much harder during an already difficult time. A few years later, she also got divorced, but it was okay because God wanted her to leave him. She has tried to reach out over the years to try to get info on my life, to talk to my parents. We are technically related by marriage, and cause drama. I had to delete all social media to get her to leave me alone. Story 24. A guy I've been friends with for over 15 years has alienated me and most of our friend group. He was always an abrasive person, but we all knew he had a good heart, and when the chips were down, would do anything to help. It's a group full of LGBT people, not by intent, but like attracts like. As time went by, he became a libertarian and kept insisting he was far smarter than anyone else politically. He also became a massive chud and would constantly argue with us on pointless because he considers himself a debater. It would always end with everyone else telling him to stop because he would always push it way too far, which resulted in everyone being pissed off, including him. Eventually, he gave me in particular an ultimatum, telling me that I had changed. I laid out that no, he was the problem and that we were worried about him. He refused to change, so I left, along with my wife and a few other friends, and then other friends who didn't want to be the only ones left around to manage him. Most of the time, I see him sitting on Discord in our server, on voice, alone. Two of our friends go and check in on him out of loyalty and pity. Like I said, he helped us out a lot in the past, but it's clear everyone is now much happier without his influence. It sucks, it really does. I mourn the person I knew before he changed, the man of reason and rationality he thinks he still is. Story 25. I overheard her laughing with her family about my fictional tragic backstory. Turned out she didn't believe me about a lot of things I had told her about my life, and was happy to discuss that fact with people. I had always thought she was one of those fundamentally decent people that you meet so few of. Turns out there are even fewer of them than I thought. Story 26. One of the smartest guys I know, talented in almost everything he did, just naturally, and I grew up so jealous of him. Late 90s, and he discovered speed and ecstasy, and through years of abuse, it changed him, even down to his face. When he was on E, his face would sag, and slowly but surely, that droopy, saggy face became his only face. Final straw was finding out he had sold some of my things he had borrowed, then lied about it, blaming others. I miss him a lot, but the guy I miss is gone now. Story 27. We were friends since elementary. He was dating a girl from middle school all the way past college. I had planned a huge road trip with all our childhood friend group. Took like 6 months to get everything and everyone on board. Friend and his GF broke up over some dumb shut H. Friend told us he can't make the trip because it was hard on him. We all canceled and stayed in town for solidarity for him. Offered to hang out, spend time, be there for him. He apparently had another friend group he'd known for a couple months and took the same road trip with that group. Left on my birthday after saying he couldn't make it to celebratory lunch with us. Shortly after, everyone in the group dropped him after that, but I was the first to make it clear I have no association with him anymore. Story 28. We were friends for about 14 years or so. What the final straw was that not only did he turn more and more racist over time, which was something I frowned up on, and I didn't want to talk about this with him, but also that he openly started to flirt with my then girlfriend when they met for the first time, and he knew about our relationship. He started showing his muscles and wanted to demonstrate how strong he was by randomly doing push-ups. He was a very look at me, I'm an attention whore kind of guy. Spoke about it later on and he told me, you know you're like this because you're on cloud 9. You'll come running back to me as soon as the relationship ends. Well, mate, it's been a year since the relationship ended. It's been a year and 6 months since we last spoke. I don't think so. Story 29. This ended a lifelong friendship in our circle of 4 friends. During the height of COVID, my friend Anne had separated from her husband the previous year and was alone. She asked our friend Jane if she could be part of her family bubble. Where we live, this was allowed us shine courage for individuals living alone, so they didn't have to be totally isolated. Anne came from a bad family upbringing and had none, and Jane always told her that family is who you make it. It's not just your blood. We, meaning our friend group, can be your sisters. Jane was particularly anxious about COVID, but wouldn't discuss it. She would cancel distanced plans last minute, stuff like that. And during COVID, Jane told Anne that, sorry, she couldn't be part of her family bubble. Her daughter had met a guy and immediately Jane invited him and his family over and be part of them. Even though they were strangers, it was very important for her to welcome him and his family in with open arms, but unimportant to do the same with her, a lone friend of 30 years. I tried to get Anne and Jane to talk about it, but Jane wouldn't acknowledge that Anne was deeply hurt, and Anne didn't want a hurtful, full-blown fight, so that ended our longtime friend group. I see Anne all the time, and Jane a few times a year, but it's super awkward and a total shame. Story 30. My best friend lying to a dude that she was infertile and immediately got pregnant. Immediately, like it had to have been the day that they met, based on when the doctors predicted she got pregnant. She'd done this twice before with 2 other dudes. At this point, it's a pattern. She spent years convincing everyone that she was disabled, so she doesn't work, which is fine to be disabled. I'm not trying to throw any shade at disabled people, but she continued to trap men with babies that she couldn't financially provide for. And since her disability is a mental disability, she isn't providing a stable mental environment for the children. When she chose to keep the last child, I blew up that friendship so quickly because I could not watch another child be the victim of her. She got angry and said a number of mean things, including how much of a bad friend I was for not dropping my plans to go to her birthday party. She was turning 32. We never really talked again. Coincidentally, I was also feeling like garbage that week because little did I know I was also pregnant and about to undergo some serious morning sickness. Blick. Story 32. I had a friend through college that I was close enough to, but not besties by any stretch of the imagination. She was a raver, a goth, a hippie, whatever she wanted in our years at college together. When she was done, she became a teacher. I became an adventurer. She got married soon after college. She was a good Christian, she said, and didn't have until marriage. Maybe that's why she rushed into marriage. The guy wasn't getting married for the same reason. And a near double-digit amount of months after the wedding, she asked why. He told her he was gay. She told him she was annulling the marriage. She was a wreck. For about 6 months, I helped her reason with and rationalize what happened, let her know there was still a lot of amazing things in the world. But then marriage equality was passed, and she said it was the worst thing to happen in American history. I told her I didn't have room for that kind of hate in my life, and while it may have seemed sensible for her, she was denying equal rights to some very special people. I haven't talked to her since. I understand she is remarried. Story 33. Good old-fashioned narcissism and bullying. Even came with a Darvo value meal. Deny any wrongdoing. Attack me personally. Uno reversed the roles of victim and offender to control the narrative. After I went no contact, He even waged a one-man crusade to smear campaign against me in a failed attempt to turn my friends against me, including trying to weasel his way into my girlfriend's good graces to get to me. All of these attempts failed spectacularly due to me essentially doing nothing while he kept proving my point about him with his abusive behavior. Now he's just a lol cow from the past, and looking back on it, I'm glad I finally stood up to him. Story 34. I asked her to be my maid of honor at my wedding, but she seemed to be mad at me for getting married. After I sent out invitations, she sent a card that only read, "Thanks, but we won't be attending," then eventually unfriended me on Facebook. I was heartbroken, and 13 years later, I still haven't heard from her. Even after I sent her a card I put a lot of thought into after I saw her mother in the obituaries a couple of years ago. I always respected that she was anti-marriage, but obviously she couldn't get over the fact that I wasn't. Story 35 told her my ex essayed me. She took his side and called me dramatic, then started dating him and told me I need to get over him because he convinced her I just wanted to get back together with my rapist. Yes, Stephanie, you can have him. No amount of explaining, showing screenshots where he admits his actions, or directly stating he raped me, I don't want to date or be friends with him, could convince her otherwise. Some people love denial. Story 36. Not lifelong, but recently ended a long friendship. Realized if I spoke, she didn't listen. She told me I had too many problems when I would force her to finally hear me. It was always her problems taking precedent, and 99% of those problems were self-inflicted. Happy to be living with much less drama, and wouldn't, some of my problems cleared up with the friendship ending. Story 37, I got chronically ill when me and her were 17, and in the middle of our partying, going out years, I suppose. I started declining more and more Saturday nights in clubs because I simply couldn't physically handle that anymore, which she had little understanding for and acted like I was letting her down. Whole thing came crashing down when she wanted to plan a week of partying in Spain, and I told her that just wasn't in the cards for me. The friendship just bled out and died after. We had been best friends since we were 3 years old. Thought that girl would be in my life forever. Life never goes as you think it will. Edit. Some added words so people don't think I personally bled out and died. Just the friendship did. Story 38. Spreading bullshit lies. They are publicly saying there are litter boxes in the classrooms, telling everyone how trans folks are ruining their lives. There are 0 litter boxes, and they have never met a trans person. They are lying on any and all hateful conspiracy theory. When I ask them for facts, they admit they don't have any and apologize. 20 minutes later, they are back online spreading the BS. I can't be friends anymore with a stupid, hateful person. I have lost all my patience. Story 39. I got married. She started off in a better place than life than me in many ways, but her life had gone too, partially as a result of her own choices, not entirely. I made a life myself, got a good career, moved to London, got a good education, bought a house, met my husband. She was supposed to be in my bridal party, but pulled out due to poor mental health. She had a meltdown at my hen do when she realized I had a whole large group of friends. I think she expected life to just hand it all to her on a plate, and it simply didn't. I think she always thought I'd be the worse off friend next to her. It just didn't pan out that way. I think the lead up to my wedding just highlighted all my successes against her perceived failings. She ghosted me after the wedding and hasn't really spoken to me since. I hold out hope she'll see sense, but I think the friend I loved and cherished is gone, a husk of herself. It'll be hard for me to overcome the fact she casually threw our friendship away over what boils down to envy. Story 40, a complete mental breakdown. My best friend and roommate was taken by the sheriff's department on a court order from his parents and put involuntary into psychiatric care for fear he was a danger to himself or others. He was released on an error by the VA. I filled a PPO against him and just completed eviction. Last weekend, he tried forcing entry into my house while my sister was home alone. We found out he came in through a window in the middle of the night and tried setting up an ambush for her. I now have security cameras set up inside and outside and just purchased a pistol. The court date for the PPO is next week. Story 41. Knowing my addiction issues, bought me a present for New Year's Eve, a full bag of cocaine. Proceeded to cry and guilt me for being a bad friend that I didn't like his expensive gift. So I did as addicts do. He put me in an Uber and sent me home at 3 a.m. on NYE, high as high can be. I don't remember the ride or getting into my house. I never talked to him again, and it'll be 3 years this year since that's happened. I realized he could have killed me, or I could have gotten assaulted, raped, murdered by the Uber driver and no one would have known. Story 42. He deep dived into the right-wing rabbit hole and touted increasingly psychotic conspiracy nonsense every day. When he basically said that he doesn't care, that a certain group he supports calls for violently getting rid of people like my wife and her family, they have immigrant background. That was it. 33 years of friendship gone, and I am never going back. Story 43, best friend of 25 years. He got 3 concussions not wearing a helmet skateboarding. Personality completely changed, became a wild conspiracy theorist, and then went full MAGA, then white supremacist neo-Nazi. He's obsessed with white women dating non-white men and rants about it constantly. He is an unemployable incel, of course. Put on 60 LEBs after becoming a vegan and yelled at me constantly for not being a vegan. I am in way better shape than him, and he was always telling me I was unhealthy. LOL. It was all just way too much. He was pissed off constantly. The memory that really sticks out in my mind is him flipping out one night when we were on an evening walk. He stopped in the middle of the road as we were crossing a street to physically demonstrate to me how it was not possible for ancient Egyptians to move blocks of stone by themselves, and it must have been aliens or advanced technology. He blocked cars to do this, and he was outraged that I didn't give him about ancient Egypt. Story 44, she had been harboring anger against me for years and decided to unleash it all on a night out that I had planned for us. We were at a really nice hotel for the evening, and I thought some food might help sober her up. I feel bad about the bartender to this day. He watched her have an absolute meltdown tantrum. Am I a perfect friend? Nope. Did I do some things in the past that I wasn't proud of? You know it. Did I own up and apologize for those things? Yep. She didn't remember much the next morning, so I told her what she had said, then tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, told her I'd be happy to just write it off as a drunk mistake and we could move on. But then she kept texting me about it. I'm talking page-long texts, and eventually I just stopped responding. I thought about contacting her a few months ago, but decided that it probably wouldn't be in my best interest.